Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Blue Box from Space, and this is the Random Retro Review. So today we're actually going to be doing something a little bit different. We are not, in fact, going to be reviewing Super Star Wars for the Super Nintendo because we all know that that is a great game. Like, it's an amazing game. Instead, I'm just going to be using my gameplay of it as a backdrop for something that's probably going to be turning into more of a review of Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, instead. Now, the reason for that being is today is Thursday, December 19th, 2019. That's the time of this recording, and hopefully the time of the release of this video, time permitted, because tomorrow is, in fact, December 20th, which will be the official release date of the Rise of Skywalker, Star Wars Episode 9, and of course that's, the official release date is tomorrow, but the way that movie releases work anymore, instead of like they used to do the midnight release, but now they do like the day before release at like 5 or 6 o'clock or something. So I'm in fact going to be about 6:30 in a couple hours here. I am going to go see the Rise of Skywalker, and I am extremely nervous about that. I've never been nervous to go see a movie before, but I am extremely nervous for this one, and I guess that just is a testament to the power of the Star Wars saga and the franchise, at least the power it has on me, because I'm a big Star Wars fan, not a huge Star Wars fan, but I'm a big Star Wars fan. Now, what I like to do before I go see a sequel movie, I tend to, if I can, watch the previous installment of that series, either the day of or the day before, a couple of days before, just to refresh, what's going on in the universe, like everybody does. I think a lot of people do that. So I literally just finished watching The Last Jedi, Star Wars Episode 8, and I've only seen that movie a handful of times, maybe like 5 or 6 times since its release, and it's unlike the originals and the prequel trilogy, which I've seen those so many times that like I pretty much, my opinion of those is fairly concrete. It's not going to change that much, but with the newer ones, it's every time I watch it, I kind of my opinion of it can change a little bit. It sort of evolves as I see them. As time goes by, they settle in to my brain a little bit, and I start to notice things different in the movies that I didn't notice before. Because I'm not trying to take as much in because I've seen it so many times. So with the Last Jedi, like I said, I just finished watching that one, and I gotta say, like, it's not a bad movie. I think it gets a bad rap. I think everybody is so quick to dismiss it as being a bad movie that I don't know. I don't think people give it a chance, really. Now, I'll explain my reasoning for why I think that The Last Jedi actually holds up with the rest of the movies in a little bit. But first I want to talk about sort of the franchise as a whole, and the problems that lie with this new trilogy. So the big thing is there's no real story, I think, that expands that arcs over this trilogy at all. It's sort of episodical, where somebody writes and directs the first one, and then the next episode is sort of built upon that in a way that somebody else sees fit, and then we're gonna have that in the third one here. And there's no real, as far as I can tell, there's no real objective. Whereas with the first Star Wars movie, Episode 4, when that came out, that was written and directed by George Lucas, and when he wrote it, he wanted to do it in a way that was like how in theaters they used to have serials that would play, where you could go in and every week they would play a different. It was kind of like TV, like weekly episodes of a TV series. Every week would be a new episode, and you would go to the theater to see these. and that's how he wanted. He wanted you to sort of walk into this movie and it'd be like that. You walked in at week 4 of this grand story arc, the space opera, right? And you sort of like get caught up through the text at the beginning, so you kind of have an idea of what's going on, but like you know, it's just one little chunk out of this story. And when he did this, he really didn't have any idea that there would be. He didn't know that there was going to be a trilogy made out of it. He was just trying to make one movie. He didn't know that there was going to be a trilogy, let alone a prequel, let alone an entire saga over this. I mean, so when he wrote it, the reason why they blew up the Death Star at the end of the first episode is because they needed a conclusion to the episode. They couldn't just sort of have it end and then, okay, the movie flops and now we just kind of leave it hanging there. He just wanted a conclusion to the movie, and that's also why they go back and destroy the Death Star again in the third episode. He wanted the taking out the ultimate evil device from the bad guys to be at the end of the last episode of this saga, but like I said, he couldn't possibly predict how successful this would be, and that it actually would end up being a trilogy. So that's why they blew up the Death Star in the first one, and then again in the last one, or the last one of the original trilogy. So whenever he wrote this, he did write out like a sort of like a sketch of what the story would be, and that's why there is like a prequel. So the main story there was like a big idea. He started in the middle of it with episode 4, and then it was carried on. Like the next writer and producer, they had a basis to work from. They knew what their objective was, so they kind of just filled in the gaps. And then the prequels, he did the prequels. George Lucas did the prequels, and he knew where he needed to end up because it was already there. So there was story there. They just had to fill in the gaps, which they did that. And then with this new trilogy, though, we're given like no direction. It's just sort of like passing the mantle, but then we don't really have a very clear-cut direction, I think. And that's a good thing and a bad thing, because you can sort of tweak it as you go, but then you're allowed to tweak it as you go, which is why I'm so nervous about it, because of all the bad things people are saying about, especially The Last Jedi. I feel like when you go back and look at it, it's not a bad movie. There's so much detail in it that sets up, that could possibly set up the Rise of Skywalker to be really, really good. But I feel like if they listen to what the opinions have been, they change everything, then it's just like, then this movie definitely is just worthless. We're gonna throw it out. It's not gonna be the last Jedi is just a big waste of time. It's 2+ hours of just nothing. So because I love Star Wars so much, I don't actually read reviews of Star Wars. Like of the movies, I tend to just form my own opinions, because it's like I love it so much. I don't care what other people think of it. Like if I think it's good, I think it's good. If you don't think it's good, but I think it's good, then who cares? Like it's something that I like. That's not to discredit people's opinions or critics or anything, but it's for Star Wars, not for every movie, but for Star Wars or other movies that I really enjoy, that I'm gonna see regardless. I don't read reviews of it. Just like I don't watch trailers for movies that I'm gonna go see, because I don't want anything ruined about it. I know that most of the time they don't ruin plots with the trailers. They're just to draw you in and look at all this action and look at who's gonna be in it. I want to be surprised the whole way through. I don't want to know anything going on. I don't even like to know the name of the title. Like when they announced that it was going to be called The Rise of Skywalker, I felt like a little bit was spoiled, because there's so many implications. There's so much you can imply from that name, and I don't want to think about what could be in the new movies while I'm watching the movie, because then you start to draw conclusions from that, or what you've seen in the trailers from the names, and then the whole time you're sitting in the movie, you're just thinking about like what could happen, instead of like enjoying the movie. It's like when somebody tells you there's a twist at the end of the movie and then you're just trying to figure out the twist the whole way. Like I don't like to watch trailers for that. I don't like to read reviews before or after I see the movie, because I just I want to form my own opinions, and my opinion changes. As I said at the beginning, as I've watched the movie more and more and see it more times, my opinion of those movies change. For example, the first time I remember, the first time I saw episode 8, I remember the whole code breaker subplot, which is like I think everybody's biggest contention with that movie. But that whole subbreaker like plot, like I enjoyed the whole movie. I remember the first time I walked out of there, I was like, wow, that was good. I really liked that. Like that was, oh man, I just remember being so emotional the whole way through and like just really, really being into that movie. But there was in the code breaker subplot, I remember distinctly being bored about halfway through it. Just like, I don't want to do this anymore. Can we just kind of get on with it? And I do remember being just completely like just bored with it. Since then though, it's kind of like if you've ever driven somewhere for the first time, it seems to just take forever, but then like every time after that, it doesn't feel as long of a trip. You know what I mean? Like, so every time I watch it since the first time, it's not as much of a struggle to watch it. It's like, it doesn't feel like it takes as long, and I'm not like waiting for this to end. Like it's definitely more palatable after the first time, for me at least. And as a matter of fact, I think that it's actually not a bad subplot. Everybody hates it because it's sort of like they go off, Finn and Rose go off and do this thing that literally amounts to nothing. But I think it might not have been successful for them, but it sets up so much more. Like if they didn't go over there and get caught, then the thief, codebreaker, whatever you want to call him, I don't actually know if he has a name, he doesn't betray them, and they don't get caught, and then they are forced, to sort of land anyway. If they had succeeded in that, they could have jumped to hyperspace and then gotten away, and then Luke Skywalker never had to show up at the end and looked all badass and fulfill sort of like his role of becoming a legend. And we'll get more on that later, but like without their failure and that whole subplot just being a complete failure for them, then that doesn't happen. And then the movie's like a whole hour shorter. They get away scot-free, right? They can kind of regroup, but they kind of can't, because this is all that's left of the Resistance. And that's you see hints of this throughout the entire movie, where the Resistance isn't the grand rebellion from the old trilogy. It's just a band of people who are resisting like what's left of the Empire, essentially. So like they're not well formed, they're not well disciplined. It's been 20 years, so most of the people that fought in the rebellion are gone. They're done fighting, they moved on because we beat the rebellion, but then it's just a group of these fresh kids or some of the old people that are trying to like teach these new kids how to be a rebellion, how to resist the Empire and evil and everything. And there's a lot of development that happens. Poe is developed throughout this entire story arc too. Like, not from the subplot directly, but in his subplot, he's developed. And because of that failure, he starts to see how he's messing up. He is brash. He is impulsive. He just wants to fight everything. He doesn't see the big picture until we get this failure of it. And then he starts to see, oh, okay, so there's other things that I can do to be a leader. I don't just have to go out and shoot everything. He can do other stuff. And then you see that at the end, of the Hoth scene. I'm just gonna, I don't remember what the name of the thing. It is Hoth, right? It's the Battle of Hoth, but it's sort of reversed. in a way because it's at the end of the movie, and it's a little bit different. And I think it's supposed to be like analogous to Hoth for multiple reasons. But before I get onto that, yes, during the end of the Battle of Hoth, Poe realizes instead of fighting like he did at the beginning, just staying and fighting and destroying an entire fleet of bombers, they need to find a retreat. They need to get out of there. They need to regroup. They need to figure out, their next move. And he leads that. Princess Leia says, what are you looking at me for? Follow him. That's her passing. He finally he gets it. She understands that he gets it now. She's been waiting for this moment to pass the mantle on to him so he can be the leader of the Resistance, which I'm hoping that's what happens in the next movie. Now back to our Hoth battle. Yes, you can see here. I think this tells a lot about the Resistance, like what I was just saying, because you have like they're flying around in these broken down junk ships. The ships are barely staying together, just like the Resistance. They're barely able to stay together. And on the other hand, you have the First Order, who is sort of like taken the fallen Empire and everything that like the Empire had all this great war machine, but that failed, right? So they just sort of picked up the pieces of the fallen Empire, and they've, instead of learning from the mistakes of the war machine, they've just made everything bigger and better and stronger, thinking they can just, the Empire just didn't have enough muscle to sort of to rule everybody. But that's not the case, like, because you can see with like in the first of this trilogy, instead of a Death Star, it's like a death planet, like that wipes out whole systems instead of just one planet at a time. It's the Death Star, but like times 1,000, right? In the Hoth scene here, you have the new AT-ATs, which are, you have the original AT-ATs standing knee high to these new ones that are just towering over them, and they're bigger and better and more powerful, and they're all standing off eventually against one man, and they essentially lose. Like, it's like a sort of a metaphor for it. I think that scene itself, while people might think it's just a ripoff of the Hoth scene, it is for a reason, and a good reason, and it really displays the sort of like the similarities and differences between the First Order and the Empire, and the Resistance and the Rebellion, and sort of like lets you know where everybody is in this time, in this saga. Although I do have to agree with some things about how certain things where they sort of build up, like I think only with Captain Phasma, they built up this character, making it seem like this is going to be like a really tough, cool character, but then the character never does anything and then just dies for no reason, which, like, I think with Captain Phasma, they did sort of hype Captain Phasma a lot, and then there was no payoff with that. On the contrary, I compare Phasma to Boba Fett, but sort of the opposite, where Boba Fett, I don't think Boba Fett was supposed to be a character that like really stood out, and I don't know personally, like I didn't read into this or anything, but I feel like George Lucas or the writers, the creators of the Boba Fett character didn't really expect Boba Fett to be that popular, and that's why he kind of died in the most embarrassing of ways. If in fact he is dead, I don't know if there's theories that he's still alive, but that's something completely different. But Phasma, I think, was a pretty big disappointment, and I was originally disappointed in Snoke because he definitely plays a big part, but you don't see a lot of him, and then he's just dead. They just kill him, and that's it. And I originally I was just like, okay, well, that was pointless to have this character. We don't have any backstory for him. He just shows up. He's here. He's a huge part of the story, but now he's dead. But then you think about like Obi-Wan. Honestly, with the original trilogy, Obi-Wan shows up. He's a huge part of it, but then he just kind of like dies, and then we don't really learn anything about his backstory or anything. Like, I think we're kind of spoiled a lot when we consider this set of trilogy to the original trilogy, because the original trilogy has the prequels where we have not just the prequels, but like the Clone Wars saga, where we have like all this information about these characters that wasn't in the original trilogy, and it gives them a lot more depth and everything. I guess I just kind of think that the character of Snoke, sort of his presence isn't just what you see there too. It's also he's the one I think that built up he created the First Order essentially. He sort of, from the ashes of the Empire. I think he's the character that brought the First Order into existence and sort of created the war machine that is the First Order, to try and stamp out the resistance and destroy this new republic that's created. So he has a big role, and I don't think that I wasn't necessarily pleased with his death, quote unquote death, because there was a part I just saw today, and I didn't even think about it until today, whenever it's the end of the movie and Rey just picked everybody up from the back of the base on Hoth type planet, Salty Hoth, and everybody's getting on the Millennium Falcon, and she gets on the Millennium Falcon, and Ren is sitting, or he finds the dice thing, and they both have that Force link and see each other again. Like, did the Force do that? Is that like something that, like, now that Snoke's dead, this is the Force kind of tying you guys together? Or is it something like maybe Snoke's not actually dead, and he's doing this still? I don't think it's that there. And I have some theories that I certainly hope aren't true, because I'm so nervous about. There's a lot of things I'm nervous. Like, I hope Emperor Palpatine doesn't come back, and that's all that anybody keeps talking about. And I'm pretty sure he's on the movie poster, which I also try to avoid too, as Star Wars movie posters. But I want Emperor Palpatine to be dead. Like, I'm scared. I'm scared of that. And the final thing I'm going to say about this too, because I've been rambling on for far too long, and like I said, I have a time limit. I need to go actually get ready to go see the movie pretty soon, and I need to actually edit this and process it and post it on the internet here. But Luke Skywalker throughout this whole thing, and I think that people were disappointed after a while, because they and that's another thing too. Like I said, I loved the movie the first time I watched it. The only part that I wasn't that happy with was the part of the Codebreaker subplot, where I kind of got bored a little bit, but I've since resolved that because it's not as boring to me anymore. But I love the movie. When I walked out of the theater, I loved the movie. But then as I stewed on it, I sort of, like I think most people did, found things that I was like, I wish they had done this, or I really don't agree with this thing, But then as I've gone back and watched it, I've sort of reverted back to my original, like, I like the movie was good. I love the movie. It's a good movie. I think it fits I think it fits up there with all the other Star Wars movies. And I think it's at least better than any of the prequels, in my opinion. Because I think a lot of people that like the prequels grew up with the prequels, like that's how they started Star Wars, and that's fine. If that's, I just think there's a lot of, they're not terrible movies, the prequels. It's just there are certain parts of those movies that absolutely ruin, like, the whole movie for me. And I don't want to get into that now. Like I said, rambling. I want to wrap this up. But Luke Skywalker, I think a lot of people were disappointed because they wanted him to just go through, and I think part of me did too, just wanted him to come out and just wreak havoc, like just destroy everything of the First Order. You know what I mean? Like, but you can't have that because then there would be no conclusion. There would be no third episode if he just went through just defeated it, or if it was setting up for him to come back and just defeat everybody. That's not what this trilogy is, you know. And he explains it. He explains it through the movie too. Like, he became this legend, the legend of Luke Skywalker. He became a legend. He can't do the things that people want him to do. He's just basically a regular dude who just also is a Jedi Master, but he's still kind of just like, he's immortal. He's a human being. He's not a god. He can't run through and just destroy everybody. And I think that was I actually do like that. I like that they did that. And without the Codebreaker stuff, without them failing there, because he comes back to sort of buy them time, right? And he comes back and you're like, oh my gosh, he's going to stand up against all these walkers, these First Order walkers, and he just sits there and just takes all this like damage, and just they don't even touch him, you know, and he just is going to wreck the place. And then it turns out he's just buying them time. But in the meantime, he does become a legend. Like, his legend grows, and that's what helps to keep the spark of the resistance and the rebellion going. Like, as you see in the final scene with the kids from the planet, the Codebreaker subplot planet, they're like, you know, the kid he's listening to the other kid tell the story about Luke Skywalker and him just taking on the First Order, and he's like so crazy powerful. He's just like a god, and then he goes out and uses the Force to bring the broom to him, and he's the next iteration of the Resistance. Like, the spark is still alive in these children, and the spark is alive because of the legend of Luke Skywalker, and that's how they needed him to be. And I really enjoyed that. And again, without that Codebreaker subplot, they wouldn't have ended up I guess I shouldn't say without the Codebreaker subplot, because they could have done something different, but without the failure of the Codebreaker subplot, without them almost getting to it and then failing, they wouldn't have ended up on that planet. And then they would have, you know, if they had succeeded at the Codebreaker subplot, then they would have not ended up on that planet. Luke wouldn't have had to come and rescue them or buy them time, and then, you know, he wouldn't have become a legend. And I think a lot of people were also disappointed in his death, and I think it was absolutely 100% fitting for Luke Skywalker to go out like that. But, you know, obviously he'll be back in the new one as a Force ghost, presumably, or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. And this is what makes me nervous, because when they started developing this saga, this trilogy, I don't think they had a plan for all three movies. I don't think they had an end goal. They're just sort of making them episodically. It's open to, it's subject to change with each episode. So like the direction that they were going, and I think they did a lot of really good development in The Last Jedi. There's a lot of good character development. I think the direction, it fits really well when you really sit down and watch the movie. It fits really well as the middle of a trilogy. It sets everything up. The characters have developed. I think they're all ready to have the trilogy. They're all ready to conclude the trilogy. And it just makes me nervous because of all the trash talking that people have been doing. Like, I'm afraid they're going to veer away from this so much that it's going to make this episode it's going to make The Last Jedi so just irrelevant, because they're going to pander to these trolls or everybody that's saying that this one was garbage. And I'm terrified. I'm really terrified. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up here, and this is pretty much off the cuff, so I'm sure I left a lot of stuff out. Just, you know, leave some comments, man. Tell me how wrong and stupid I am in the comments. But that's my opinion, and I don't know, man. Just go try watching it again. Watch it a few more times. Watch the Last Jedi a few times just to really soak it all in. Also, Star Wars is not a kids movie. I don't know why people would say that it's a kids movie. Just going to throw this in at the end here, because people literally get their heads cut off in The Last Jedi. I don't know how, like, because it's people are getting their arms severed and like their heads cut off, and like I wouldn't call it a kids movie. I think it's can be described as being suitable for younger kids ish, but I would never call Star Wars a kids movie. No, that's just anyway. So please comment. Tell me what you think of the prequels, the originals, the new ones. Tell me what you think of all of it. And thanks for sticking around for this. And go out and see Star Wars, or don't, whatever. But we'll see you in the next one, guys. Thanks.